Haitian authorities have reported over 300 missing persons during the search and rescue missions. Tropical storm Grace hit the Yucatan Peninsula, while storm Henri is approaching to southern Bermudas. The Transition Council and leaders of the Taliban discussed the security plan in Afghanistan as the arrangement of the government's structure is underway. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, this is from the South. I am Henri. We begin with the news. The humanitarian crisis in Haiti worsens. The latest preliminary report of the Civil Protectorate showed a number of 332 missing people. The injured count rose to 12,268 as a result of tremors. The southern department, one of the three most damaged by the earthquake, registers 1,832 deaths so far, being the city of Haiti, the one with most cases for an amount of 2,189 fatal victims. Meanwhile, authorities carry on with operations of street cleanings and rubble removal in the affected areas of Haiti. The inhabitants of the communities jumped into the search and rescue missions and joined forces to cooperate in cleaning the wreckage. Prime Minister Henri, however, expressed their reticence, pointing out that too many people still lay under the debris. International humanitarian workers informed that the hospitals in the territories most devastated by Saturday's earthquake are practically out of service. In the meantime, Colombian ex-militaries acknowledged their responsibilities in the murder of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. A Colombian television channel disclosed that I had access to the statements of the gunmen involved in Moïse's killings. In a 15-hour span of audio, 4 of the suspects told their accounts on the events of July 7th and the hours that followed the magnitude. Joseph Felix Badillo, ex-member of the Haiti's Justice Ministry, gave the order of operation that resulted in Moïse's killing to retired Army Captain Herman Rivera Garcia. A commando of 26 mercenaries erupted at the presidential house without resistance from the security forces that guarded the mandatory. And we go now to Brazil, where public sector workers have started a national strike against President Jair Bolsonaro's policies. Our correspondent Brian Meir provides us more information.
In Brazil, tens of thousands of public sector workers took to the streets of dozens of cities yesterday in a national day of work paralyzation and protest against a change to the constitution proposed by President Jair Bolsonaro and his allies, which would weaken labor rights and commodify public services.
All of the recent reforms that have been made in Brazil are based on reforms that were made during the Pinochet dictatorship in Chile. This model does not work in Chile, and it will definitely be a disaster for education and public services here in Brazil.
If the amendment passes, current regulations guaranteeing labor security for government workers would vanish, and the door would be open to replace public schools with a voucher system. But the unions are not giving up, and are also fighting to impeach the president, whose popularity is nearing an all-time low.
We are here fighting against this genocidal clown, fighting so that our rights still mean something, so they can't take them away from us. We are going to stop this amendment from passing. It is going to work out. Our comrades will win this struggle.
Union leader Douglas Izzo says this fight is only just beginning, and that even more people will take to the streets on September 7th, which is National Independence Day, to demand the ouster of President Bolsonaro. Brian Meir, teleSUR, São Paulo.
Cuban laboratories have produced antibodies that neutralize all the variants of COVID-19. Specialists guarantee that the results of the neutralization study of the Abdallah and Zubarana O2 serums show the immunogens are effective in neutralizing agents against all COVID-19 derivatives, including the Delta variant. In a meeting with the national authorities, it was disclosed that there are not all million people will be vaccinated next week, and 22 other municipalities are set to begin immunization. The doses for this effort will be distributed in Cuba in the next hours. Last week, 20 million doses of Abdallah anti-COVID-19 vaccines were produced and are now ready for distribution. Paralympic officials in Tokyo reported the first confirmed coronavirus case in the Olympic Village 5 days before the Games are set to open. The case is one of 16 associated with the Paralympics so far. The early Paralympic cases came as Japan is reporting record daily new cases. On Tuesday, the Japanese government extended the state of emergency in Tokyo and other regions until September 12th, a week after the end of Paralympic Games. Organizers recorded more than 500 cases within the Olympic bubble. Seiko Hashimoto, president of the Tokyo Organizing Committee, said that tight measures have been implemented to avoid large outbreaks. We'll be right back after this very short break. Welcome back. Tropical Storm Grace hit the Yucatan Peninsula while Storm Henri is approaching to southern Bermudas. Tropical Storm Grace left the Dominican Republic and Haiti with landslides and floodings and hit Mexican ground just over Cancun. Its trajectory is oriented towards the west, predicted to pass through Toluca and Jalisco. Its impact spread all along the Yucatan Peninsula, all of which is officially under orange alert. The government has issued warnings to the population, reminding them to take shelter and evacuate the vulnerable areas. Meanwhile, in the Atlantic, Tropical Storm Henri's course is no longer a danger to Bermuda as the phenomenon backs away from the island, with some forecasts predicting its growth into a hurricane. The rains in central Chile left 50 affected people and electrical power outs in several cities. Authorities informed of 50 displaced people in the metropolitan area due to the rains, plus 14 sheltered in temporary facilities and 11 evacuees. Also reported 13 houses with major damages and the same number with mild structural destruction. In between 20 and 60,000 people have suffered interruptions in the electrical supply due to the bad weather. The rains are expected to last until Friday night. Authorities prepare to reduce the impact of the event. Argentine firefighters struggled to control wildfires in Intiaco, San Clemente, and Potrero del Garay to prevent the flames from approaching residential areas. 100 people have been evacuated from Potrero del Garay, while the flames have destroyed 40 houses. Cordoba's government warned of an extreme risk of fire throughout the province amid the dry and windy weather. In this regard, the chief of Civil Defense of Cordoba, Diego Concha, stressed that the highly explosive bulbs are advancing with great speed. The rising heat, which reached 34 degrees Celsius, plus the drought in the province, may fighting the fire a much difficult task. Meanwhile, in Northern California, the Dixie Fire has scorched over 240,000 hectares, an 8 times increase in only 24 hours since it originated to cover 30,000 hectares on Wednesday. The smoke has polluted the air of nearby urban centers. 2 people have been reported injured, while thousands have been evacuated and instructed to seek out refuge. Other blazes of considerable size are affecting woodsland and residential vicinities in the United States, such as the one initiated in Calder, another town in California. And on the fifth day of an intense fight against wildfires that have killed 2 people and destroyed thousands of hectares of forest in France, planes and water bomber helicopters try to contain the blazes that are spreading through the southeastern Riviera haven of Saint-Tropez in the Var department. The Capitol Police in Washington, D.C. alerted of a possible explosive attack on the area and ordered evacuation of its facilities. Media reported that a man in a pickup truck made a bomb threat and that law enforcement and the FBI have dispatched negotiators to try to engage the suspect, who later turned himself into authorities. The Library of Congress's main building had been evacuated, as well as a Senate office building and the nearby Republican National Committee headquarters. Both of Senate and House of Representatives are currently on recess, but staffers are working in the Capitol complex. Tensions have remained high in Capitol Hill more than 7 months after the deadly January 6 insurrection, when supporters of then President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol, fought with police, and sought to block certification of the presidential election. Also in April, a man rammed a car into barriers at the U.S. Capitol, killing 1 police officer before the attacker was shot and killed. Clashes between herders and fishermen in northern Cameroon left thousands trying to find shelter in Chad, as reported by the UN. The United Nations Refugee Agency said some 11,000 people fled to Chad, and a further 7,300 were displaced in Cameroon's far north. After fighting broke out on August 10th between herders, fishermen, and farmers from different ethnic groups. The violent events have left about 32 casualties this month, with 19 villages torched. The officials described the fighting as Cameroon's worst ethnic violence in years. 85% of these Cameroonians arriving in Chad are women and children. Among them, among the many men, the majority are elderly, according to data compiled by the Chadian government. The risk of spread of lethal marshable disease detected in Guinea is high, according to the World Health Organization Regional Director for Africa, Matshidiso Moeti, who also addressed the response to the Ebola case reported in Ivory Coast and the fragile COVID-19 situation across the continent.
The case of Marburg reported in Guinea is the first such case to be reported in West Africa. As WHO, we've assessed the risk of spread as high at that national level and across the African region, considering the porous borders and fragile health systems in the countries. On the Ebola outbreak in Cote d'Ivoire, or the Ebola case, I should say, this is the country's first confirmed case of Ebola since 1994. The patient is a Guinean national who traveled to Cote d'Ivoire from Guinea, and within hours of arriving in Abidjan was admitted to a hospital. So in fact, this affects both countries. She's currently receiving treatment in a hospital.
We have more stories coming up after this financial break. Welcome back. The Transition Council and leaders of the Taliban gathered on Wednesday night to discuss the security plan in Afghanistan as the arrangement of government structure is underway. The meeting took place in the residence of Abdullah Abdullah, the president of the Council for National Reconciliation, who called for a unified and independent Afghanistan based on justice and equality. The Taliban delegation was led by Khalil al-Rahman Haqqani, who asked for the operation of political leaders and elders of the country to guarantee the population safety. Ex-President Hamid Karzai attended the encounter. Meanwhile, the self-proclaimed Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan announced that the Supreme Taliban leader, Sheikh Hibatullah Akhundzada, ordered the excarceration of all the country's political prisoners. At least 3 people died and around 12 were injured after Taliban groups shot against protests that rejects the establishment of the symbols of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan in the city of Jalalabad. This is one of the first protests against the Taliban ever since the group took over the country. Tensions in the area unfolded after citizens replaced an Islamic Emirate flag with the colors of white and black in a traffic circle of the city, and later on replaced that with the previous orders red, green, black, and striped. Shots reported fires in the main square of the Bermudas district when protesters recreated the actions and made another flag switched. The hostilities grown on the eve of Afghanistan's Independence Day. The United Arab Emirates Foreign Ministry confirmed in a brief statement that Afghan President Ashraf Ghani was in the country. For days, rumors swirled about the whereabouts of Ghani. Some reports suggested that he went to neighbor in Uzbekistan or Tajikistan or perhaps Oman. There were also rumors that Saudi Arabia had agreed to give him asylum, and he was accompanied by as many as 208 ministers and members of parliament. In a social media speech, the president of Afghanistan in exile reiterated that he left the country to prevent the bloodshed from happening and avoid a great disaster. China called on the Taliban to establish a lasting peace in Afghanistan and asked critics of the insurgents to adopt dialectical thinking.
We encourage and hope that the Afghan Taliban will follow through on their positive statements, unite with all parties and ethnic groups in Afghanistan, and soon establish a broad and inclusive political structure that is in line with Afghanistan's own national conditions and is supported by the people through dialogue and consultation. We also hope that it will carry out mild and solid policies to curb all kinds of terrorism and criminal attacks and ensure a smooth transition in Afghanistan, so as to keep the Afghan people who have suffered in the war allowed away from conflicts as soon as possible and establish a lasting peace. We have also noticed that some people are repeatedly emphasizing that they do not trust the Afghan Taliban. What I want to say is, nothing in the world always stays the same. We advocate comprehensive, connected, and developed dialectical thinking to understand, treat, and deal with problems. We should not only look at the past, but also at the present situation.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his Libyan counterpart held a news conference after bilateral talks took place in Moscow on Thursday. The top diplomats exchanged views on a broad range of international issues, including the situation in the Middle East and North Africa. The ministers discussed the current situation in Libya, including ways to achieve its comprehensive normalization in light of the collective effort made to move forward in a Libyan negotiating process. The Russian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that Libyan Prime Minister's visit to Moscow was an important step in ramping up constructive cooperation. Muslims in Iran held rituals on Thursday to commemorate Ashura, a martyrdom anniversary of Imam Hussein and his faithful companions. Ashura is the culmination of a 10-day annual mourning period in the lunar calendar month of Muharram for Imam Hussein, who was martyred along with his 72 companions in the Battle of Karbala in southern Iraq in 680 AD, after fighting for justice against much larger army of Yazid I. The Muharram ceremonies symbolize the eternal and unwavering stance of truth against falsehood and humanity's struggle against injustice, tyranny, and oppression. In Iran, however, ceremonies are different this year, as gatherings in closed areas and street marches are banned due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I am Henri. Thank you for watching.